I'd like to call the General Service Committee to order. First thing is privilege of the committee chair, committee members, or board of supervisor. Second thing on the agenda is Dan Cologne, data processing. Talk about 2013 budget.
All right. I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk to you guys about the implications of the budget that was recommended by the Finance Committee. I understand that right now we're still under the tentative budget, but I do have some concerns about some of the cuts that were made in the Finance Committee's budget, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about it with you in case that budget does get adopted. And my main concerns really are regarding the 3 additional positions that are cut, which include the print shop, which is totally cut out of that budget, and the technician for the sheriff's office, and our other technician, which basically takes care of the rest of the county. And you know, my main concerns are that we just can't make these cuts without having a plan. And it's a little frustrating that these were recommended without any discussion with me, because there are other areas that I probably would have made cuts. Nobody wants to see anything cut, but I understand that we are in a tough time here. But you know, these are our only 2 technicians and the print shop. The county relies pretty heavily on this print shop. It does bring in some revenue, and if the board wants that print shop phased out, then I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it and make a plan. We just spent over $30,000 repairing all of the equipment at the print shop from the last flood. So, you know, to turn around and cut it out, I just think is a mistake. And as far as the technicians go, you know, we have other people in our department. We have people that take care of the network, we have people that program, we have people that crunch numbers, but we only have 2 technicians. So with those positions lost, that's basically the first level help support for the county staff, which means, you know, this would affect email outages, this would affect network outages, because those people are now going to have to walk around and help reset people's passwords and do what that technician does. So once again, I just wanted to, you know, let you guys know what will happen if that goes through, especially now that, you know, as you know, every company relies on technology, and we rely on it more and more all the time. Our network is getting stressed. We've had a lot of failures this year. We lost our file server in the spring. We lost our email server. Because we're running this equipment as long as we possibly can until it dies, which you know, then requires a lot of time to put it all back together. So we're trying to be as cheap as we possibly can on equipment, but then that increases our labor costs. You know, so you know, technology definitely costs money, and you know, I just don't see our network usage going down anytime soon, and we really need these people to help keep everything put together. You want to say something?
Well, whenever.
Okay. Anyway, so those are my concerns, and you know, I really just, I would love to sit down at the beginning of the year to discuss a plan. Like I said, we do a lot of the work that we do in this department is actually non-IT related. We do school taxes, we do village taxes, we do payroll for a lot of other outside municipalities. And I wouldn't want to see any of that go, but if something had to go, I'd look in those areas, those outside services, before we cut our core IT areas. And I do have some long-term plans for those to start to phase out those areas, but I think these cuts right now that are proposed are just the wrong move right now. So I'm just asking you to either vote against that budget if it comes up, or support me to put those positions back in if it does get passed, because I just think it's important that we make a plan that makes sense for the county. And also we do have a contract with the city of Amsterdam, which was approved this year, and by losing these people, it would make it almost impossible to fulfill those obligations. So the county would have to suffer so that we can fulfill that contract. So there's just a lot of things that are integrated, that I wouldn't want to see fall through the cracks right now. All right, Butch?
Question, Dan. If the print shop is eliminated, you're gonna have to go to the outside.
Right.
Do you have any idea, I mean, as far as what it's gonna cost us to go on the outside rather than doing it in-house? Which one is gonna be more economic?
Well, I mean, that's why we need to sit down and really analyze it. I mean, it would take time to really figure out what outside print shops are charging, but I know from what I hear from our outside customers that we're generally at least half of what they charge. I know last year during the flood, or after the flood, we had to outsource a lot of jobs for 2 months while we were, out of work. And I don't have those numbers with me, but I know they were definitely more than we charge. Business cards can cost you $100 somewhere else. We charge $15, $20. So we basically cover our material plus a little bit of labor. It definitely would be more expensive, but I'm not saying, there are areas that we could reduce printing. So it's hard to say that it'll be cheaper if we keep us.
Okay, my next question is, and just to go back to that for a minute, if you want to retain a position, if we have the information for that, I'm just saying it's going to be a lot easier because otherwise they're,
Right.
Okay. The other thing is that you said you'd rather cut elsewhere than the ones that are proposed.
Right, if I had to, I don't want to make any of these cuts, and any of them really require planning, because, we have obligations to these other people, these outside municipalities, and whoever we're doing business with. But my point is just that, I think some of you look at our department as really big for an IT department, but there's a lot of work that goes directly into real property, there's a lot of work that just goes into payroll, there's a lot of non-IT work. So if things are really that bad that we need to start making cuts that we don't want to make, I would rather concentrate on our network and just more IT.
Well, I'd like to see, I'd like to see the input from the department head, okay? And I think quite a few of the supervisors agree that without the input from you guys, and if you can help us with the budget to get this thing through and cut somewhere else or balance it somewhere else, I think that if you can write that up and get it to us quick, I think it'll help. That's my personal opinion.
I agree, and that's why this has been kind of tough, because I haven't really been involved in any of this. And I know you guys hear from every department head, we need this, we need that. But if you make a decision, you need to cut a person or 2 people or 3 people, I'd rather you come to me and say, we need these cuts, and you decide where they're going to be.
Well, I appreciate the one that you're coming here and saying that you can cut it elsewhere or make some other changes, so I'd be receptive to that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? Yeah?
Just a little bit of clarification. The Finance Committee recommendation that went out with a request that the department heads fill in their recommendation in a separate column if it differed from the Finance Committee recommendation, and I'm assuming that you did that.
Right, I just, I understand that process, but these were pretty drastic cuts, so it just took me by surprise. But yes, I did put that back in and explain why.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Vanessa?
Dan, I support you 100%, and I'm not going to advocate for any cuts. Sean has prepared a budget for this board that doesn't have any cuts in it. The only thing that I would change in that budget is adding some money to the Office of the Aging, and then passing that budget and move along to the next year. There's still some fund balance left over after that budget will be passed, and I think we can live with that for the upcoming year. And then we'll see what happens. If the economy changes, we start to get more money in, we start to get more sales tax revenue in, then those changes we'll have to make in 2013. But for right now, I think the budget is suffice.
Any other questions for Dan?
I just wondered if the print, hypothetically, if the print shops were eliminated, what the heck would we do with the equipment? And how much of the value is there? I mean, just a rough, I mean, what's there? What would we do? Sell it? Would we?
We'd sell it. I mean, we'd probably talk to some of the other print shops. We can sell stuff on Craigslist, eBay. I mean, we definitely would get money for that stuff, but
It's pit, I mean.
But some of the, we have some good equipment. I think one of the biggest ticketed items is the press, which a lot of people are not using a press anymore, so that would probably be tough to get value for it. But like I said, we just spent $30,000 or so replacing, fixing a lot of that equipment. So I'm not sure how much we can get dollar for dollar, but we definitely could get some money for it. It's definitely a possibility.
You think realistically, and maybe I misunderstood you, but I thought you said that given the opportunity to come up with a plan, you could phase it out, but it's with a realistic plan over time, not just,
Well, it all comes down to what you want.
you want to.
What services
Yeah.
do you want? What services do you not want? You know, if you don't want a print shop, that's fine, but, you know, we have to communicate that to all the other departments so they can make other plans. You know, we don't have to do it. I'm not saying right now I would prefer either way, but we just need to decide the services you want and the services you want to outsource, because, you know, you're still going to print. So you're either going to pay someone else to do it, or, you know, you can reduce. And what I would suggest is that, you know, if you're going to phase it out, then let's talk about reducing printing, so that you're not just paying double to have somebody else do it. You know, so there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it, but there's also a lot of things that we have to print at this level.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah?
As far as your print shop, I believe that you may be undervaluing your service. I've seen some of the prices that are coming back to my town and what you're charging to do the service, and I believe it's quite a bit under what it would cost me to go out to the private sector. So that's something that you could look at this year, is perhaps increasing your revenues, what you're charging to do the service. One thing that did come up in discussion was that the sheriff had an IT person that perhaps you were looking to divest yourself of, and the
Yes.
sheriff would pick it up in his budget. Has that conversation happened with the sheriff?
I'm not sure where that is right now, but the original plan was to take that one technician, transfer him to his budget, just because of his uniqueness and size and requirements. I think the sheriff put in a requisition for a new network engineer, which would basically replace that technician and bump him up a little bit. I'm hearing conflicting stories. I'm not really sure if that request went through or if this position would be transferred.
Sean might have something to offer.
I did get the request from the sheriff. It came after the tentative budget came out. It was a request of the sheriff to add a network technician in his budget.
So if that's the case, then, you know, I'd be willing, I was planning on losing that person at some point, whether it's transferred over or he hires a new person. That technician I kind of don't count as part of our county business.
Thank you, Chair.
Bill?
John hit on what I was going to suggest, and I do know for a fact that the rates are more than reasonable. If we were to keep the print department, maybe we should look at tweaking those numbers.
We have talked about that. It's just, it's tough. You know, that's one of the areas that it's tough to figure out what we should be charging. You know, we don't have a research department, or, you know, we don't have the time to go around to other print shops and figure out what they're charging. But we definitely,
Just competitive, you know, instead of being so you undercut the next guy so he doesn't have a chance, if at least you're competitive, people have a choice, whether they go over here or they come over here.
Any more questions for Dan? Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Next item would be Paul. And cell phones.
Yeah, a number of months ago, I came to the board with a proposal to change the county's cell phone carrier because Nextel was kind of phasing out and Sprint took over, and the last time we upgraded the cell phones, I'm sure you folks have heard it as much as I have. It's just been a continuous complaint of drop calls, poor service, coverage, no reception, perfect reception 1 second, nothing the next second without moving anywhere. So after our discussion here a few months ago, I had 3 or 4 phones that were Verizon and 3 or 4 phones that were AT&T, and I had my people go in various locations, just took it with them when they went out on a daily basis, you know, tried the various basements and the public safety facility and various areas around the county as a comparison, just as a coverage comparison. And based on that, Verizon seemed to have a much wider coverage. When I looked at the numbers, by changing our plan to a 15,000 minute plan, which we hadn't exceeded in well over a year, the rates were coming in at about $300. We would save roughly $300 a month by switching from our current Sprint plan to a Verizon 15,000 minute plan.
Bill?
Paul, do the employees contribute anything toward their phone at all?
No. No, there used to be a policy initially that they would reimburse for personal calls, but now the policy is no personal calls.
I was just gonna mention, in our town, we pay half the cost. Everybody that carries a phone picks up half because we're using it as a personal phone as well as a business phone. And it works. I'm sure the unions would have to weigh in on that. It's a cost saving measure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that would do to the usage. Would we need to then upgrade from the 15,000 minute plan to?
You don't think they're using it as a personal phone?
I monitor mine monthly, and if they are, it's minimal. I mean, I can't speak for the other departments, but they all get their bills every month. But
Well, maybe if you were to ask for a contribution, you might be able to pay for more minutes too and still save money. Not a popular idea, I'm sure.
Mike?
Someone new here, who decided who gets phones? Is there a policy?
I'm not sure. Paul, can you fill us in on that?
I mean, initially it was set up, there was a committee set up. I know Sean was on the committee, I know the purchasing agent was on the committee, the auditor was on the committee, and they went through, because back then, the sheriff's department had their own plan. My department had its own plan. Social services had their own plan, probation had their own plan. So they sat down and they developed one plan. I'm assuming each department determined what their needs were as far as communication. And who would do it.
The way it was set up was all the department heads were offered a phone. And from there, it was up to the department heads to determine what their needs were for their employees, whether their employees needed a phone for work or not. And that's how the number came about.
Is there a list?
There's a list of all the phones
How
out
many
there.
just dropped, how many?
I have no idea how many phones there are.
Just in Paul's department.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the list, but it's not numbered in any way. Just looking at it, it's less than. It's approximately 73.
About a quarter of the workforce.
Yeah, and actually, I know before our last upgrade, it was like 78 or something. I think we reduced it by 5 because there were just some. And when we did when we went through the projections, there were some phones that just had no usage, so that we were able to do away with approximately 5 phones.
Go ahead,
Are
Mark.
they all the same type of phone?
For the most part, yes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's one, I think the undersheriff has a BlackBerry, but other than that, they're all decent phones.
Brian?
You said you did AT&T and Verizon? And is,
As a coverage comparison,
right, and did you get prices from AT&T too, or no?
they're very comparable.
Okay. So the pricing is about the same, but the coverage is better with Verizon?
Yeah, as I recall, the north side of the river was probably a little difference between the two. The southern part of the county is where the difference between AT&T and Verizon was noted.
Thank you, Jeff.
Tom?
What's the total bill a year for all of them? I mean, just for,
Roughly, we're paying,
About $40 a month.
it's like 40,000 a year.
Pay $39.99.
it's about 20,500 roughly. Currently. And we bring it down to around 7.
I just buy more one of those.
I mean, zero.
You had me zero, Dad?
Excuse me.
Pardon?
$20 a month per phone.
Roughly.
Any other questions for Paul? What is it you want to do with this, Paul? Oh,
Just to give you a backup, what's in the tentative budget, the next total amount was $24,870. And that's included in line A12, 416, 20, 44, 11.
In 2006, resolution number 337 was passed, basically standardizing to Nextel.
What month is that?
October of 2006.
That's what. Remember, I was doing something.
That's what kind of brought about the whole cell phone issue, was the 2006 flood.
Yeah.
The lack of communication that was there amongst the county departments.
so what is it you wish to do with it?
Well, I guess what I'd like to see is a change to this resolution somehow, changing it, allowing us to change the plan. this does standardize to next up.
So to make up a resolution and put it on finance.
Thanks,
Let's move on.
Is that the wishes? That okay with you? That means we'll have to do away with the standardization in the resolution and to accept Verizon.
All the phones will swap over?
The numbers will stay the same, yes.
John?
One question on the AT&T call, do they offer carryover of minutes as they do on the private lines?
An accumulation of minutes?
Yes, of unused minutes.
I don't know.
I know you haven't gone over them, but where we could get into a situation where we were using phones a lot.
Verizon, you get a discount on your home phone.
Yeah, I know with the Verizon calls don't count against your minutes, so I really think our usage is gonna end up going down. Because I know when I review my bills, for the most part, our phones are calling each other. For the most part, it's an internal communication. Because we did away with our two-way radios a number of years ago, and that's our only communications now by cell phone. So for the most part, I know when I review my bills, it's to each other, so now those minutes aren't gonna count.
Thank you, Chair.
And we'll put that on with the Finance Committee resolution. You want to talk about next year's budget?
That's a loaded question. As Dan had concerns over the green column budget, finance committee recommended budget, I do as well. I mean, there was substantial reduction in staff within my department. It was 12, near like I could tell, it was 12 positions. I guess what I would just like to point out or remind supervisors is that in 2010, I'm pretty sure Supervisor Grieco was chairman. I know we started out January, first week of January, we had a department head meeting, and he stressed from day one the need to make cuts to the budgets. I know through retirements, I lost a number of people in 2010, made some additional cuts so that the department's 2011 budget was $1.3 million less than the 2010 budget. That has carried over to where my 2013 request was like approximately $1.6 million less than the 2010 budget. Across those 3 years, the cumulative effect was $4.5 million reduction in the Department of Public Works budget across the funds. Those cuts, I don't think were fat that was cut from the 2010 budget. The fat had been cut, I think, in the 1980s. So that was all meat that was getting cut. The services have gotten, one of the things we had to do is eliminate bridge maintenance crew. But I think it was cost effective in the long run, what it does for preserving our infrastructure. And while I understand the need for cuts, based on Finance Committee's presentation last week in the annex building, I understand the use of fund balance, the tax base stagnating or reducing, and all those factors have had a huge impact on the countywide budget. But I know the reduction in personnel that was proposed would be devastating to the services provided to the public.
Any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Moving on, resolution transferring funds and amending 2000 operating budget, data processing. As a sponsor, do I have a second? Quackenbush, any discussion? Wishes of the committee? Any opposed? Yep. Resolution transferring funds, purchase printer copier, data processing. I'm the sponsor. Do I have a second? Brian? Seconds it. Any discussion? Wishes of the committee? Move it. Resolution authorizing treasurer to amend the 2000 operating budget, Public Works. I'm the sponsor. Do I have a second? Greg? Any discussion? Mr. Bowerman?
There just has to be some changes in our form of Robin on the transfer from, there's some accounts that have to be added to properly account for it. We transfer.
Okay, numbers are wrong.
No, the numbers on here are correct, but there has to be a couple additional items to that.
Oh, okay.
You have to recognize the transfer between funds.
Will that be an amendment to the full board meeting?
If you want that, I can,
Do you have the information now?
yeah, you
Is it
have
gonna
to,
change the bottom line number?
no.
Just
You
within the
have to
accounts
add, you
then?
have to the transfer from is correct. The transfer to would be to A064990009903, transfer road machinery fund for $60,700. And then you would increase the DM 12-3-50-31 interfund transfer for $60,700 and increase the DM 12-4-51-30-00-4441 gas oil diesel for $60,000.
Okay, you can bring that up here later.
Well,
Yeah, you give
I'll
it to
shoot it to her in the
me.
morning.
Okay.
Amend that as he stated. Wishes of the committee? Any questions? I'll sponsor the amendment. Any second on the amendment? Brian. Wishes of the committee on the amendment? On the motion? Authorizing chairman to sign Federal Transit Operating Assistance Agreement, Economic and Development Planning. I'm the sponsor. Do I have a second? Tom? Any discussion? Wishes of the committee? Which resolution? Number 7 are we on? 6. Resolution authorizing chairman to sign federal section 5311 2013-14 consolidated grant application, New York State DOT Economic and Development Planning I sponsored it. Do I have a second? Tom Quackenbush. Any discussion? Wishes of the committee? Move it. Authorizing chairman to authorize RFP for consultants to perform specific tasks for solid waste plan, economic and development. I'm a sponsor. Do I have a second? Greg? Any discussion? Wishes of the committee? Resolution authorizing chairman of the board to sign the 2000 post-closure monitoring and maintenance agreement with the Montgomery Seagulls Area Solid Waste Management Authority Board of Supervisors. I'm a sponsor. Do I have a second? Quackenbush. Any discussion? Wishes of the committee?
Yeah, I think there is a question. What's the current shortfall? And then what do you see in 2013?
Current shortfall, we're projecting overall for the agency is approximately 15,000 tons. About 10 of that, I believe, is Montgomery. The only thing I'd like to add to that is at present, we are making our budget.
This is post-closure.
Post-closure, but still.
Okay, so now, talk to us here.
Post-closure is, we're making budget, so the gap number is something that some of us feel is absorbable within the authority. Post-closure is not something that the authority can absorb because it's a cost to maintain the closed landfills. There's the post-closure agreement. So you're 10,000 tons short this year. The dollar per ton fee, tip fee was $3. I think it was
$3.43.
So for 10,000 tons, you're looking at about $35,000 of a shortfall for the post-closure. You're looking at, I believe it's $17 a ton we were doing for administrative fees. So that's $170,000. As I say, there may be energy within the authority to try to absorb that and not pass along a bill to the counties. That's been a bone of contention with some of the authority board members in the past. Don't know if it's going to go, but there you go.
Let's go back to the administrative portion. At 17, what?
17 and change, so you're looking at a,
That was on top of the 340.
that's on top of it, that's correct. Because
The
they're two
post-closure.
separate things. They're two separate bills. The
For
post-closure
post-closure.
is for the landfill maintenance, which you don't have to use MOSA to do. You just currently are your landfill post-closure manager.
Okay. And the administrative portion?
That is the administrative cost of running MOSA, which is not associated with the post-closure agreement.
Okay. So you're going to absorb the 17.
I said we're going to have discussion and try.
There goes your budget.
Yeah. There's energy to do that. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so what are you looking at the current
Because most is
shortfall?
making budget.
Huh?
Most is making budget.
Yeah, okay. But you're short the 35,000.
Correct.
Where in the current budget is the 35,000?
That's a separate budget item.
No, in our budget.
Oh, in our budget.
Yeah.
There. It's not there.
Okay.
It's in next year's budget.
It's in the fund balance is where it is.
Well, it's in next year's budget as a line for post-closure shortfall. Tentative, next year's tentative.
How much?
So you're gonna ask.
170,000?
No, I think it was 40. Is it 50? 50.
So we're looking at
85,000. administrative plus the some potentially.
We're looking at the 590 times the 10, so you're looking at almost 60,000, 59,000, if we're 10,000 tons next year. Why, is that what they're diverting?
Yep, too close.
Even if you don't need the administrative costs, that could potentially be much larger than 60.
Correct.
It was 17 plus 3, right? 20, roughly 20.
That's 10,000.
This year.
200K.
Next year.
Next year it's 590 plus whatever.
Yeah, it goes from $3.43 to $5.90 next year because there's a leachate breakout in Weston.
So how many tons does that include for that 253,000?
42,000 tons, 43,000 tons?
Montgomery typically, there's 42,000 tons give or take generated within the county.
Right.
That's total. What we're talking about here is the 10,000 ton shortfall from the commitment that's been made by Montgomery to most.
No, I think Tom was asking for that 200, that lump sum. You don't see it. There's a lump sum number in,
In the resolution.
That covers all of the tonnage for the post-closure agreement.
For the 3 counties.
No,
For just
that's
Montgomery.
Montgomery County. That's Montgomery County.
so the 590 is made up by those that bring their waste in.
Correct, the
By
590,
by the 34,000 tons that's brought there.
yes, that's paying for landfill closure cost at 590 for 2013.
So the shortfall what we're talking about here is the shortfall.
Right. By budgeting the two, and I've got my letters all mixed up there. The 253, is that what it was?
253, I believe.
253, by budgeting that, you're going to assess it to the property owners. By going the tip fee method, yes, there may be a shortfall, but the majority of it is paid by the consumer at MOSA when they go across the scale. That's the difference. You're not going to have to raise a tax in order to pay the majority of it.
I already taxed to pay my portion of it because it comes in from real property taxes. Because I have curbside garbage collection. Okay.
Any other questions? Wishes of the committee? Anything under other? Motion adjourned. Brian? Tom?